So I think we'll get started. I'm pretty sure Kim's going to join as well, but we'll wait and see, and you know, certainly when she joins in, we can welcome her. But I think basically what we were going to do last week, we'll do this week, and then depending on whatever else other people want to talk about, if you want to share something, if you have specific questions. But I know that last week we were going to go over the assignment process in terms of just making sure that everybody knows how to get stuff back to kids, how to assign a grade if that's something you want to do. I know a lot of teachers don't like doing that, and I certainly understand why, although the comment feedback can be helpful. And then talk about some strategy you can use to give kids choice in an assignment. So instead of just sending out a Google Doc or sending out something for them to use as a starting point, you can also give them a chance to submit other types of work. So if you want to give kids a little bit of freedom. So first and foremost, does anybody have any questions about the assignment from this week? It was pretty simple, I think.
It was fine.
Mark, you're good, right? Okay, he's watching the microwave. So, all right. So what I'd like to jump into then is just quickly, I want to show my screen, I think, from the teacher's perspective and the students, some ways on getting feedback to kids, what it looks like from the kids' point of view, how the kids can keep track of what work is coming up, what might be late, what they haven't done, and then we can jump into how would you set up an assignment where you want to give kids some choice in how they show proficiency or how they meet the expectations for that assignment. So let me quickly grab my screen share here and do that. I know, then you get the infinite tunnel of doom. Okay. So can everyone see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I can, Paul. I did just get somebody asking me if I'm in the Hangout because they don't have the link for it.
Oh, who is it? Because I'll just send it to them really quick.
I'm going to find out.
Okay. Yep, absolutely. If you, Mark, you could even send them the link. I think it's at the bottom of the window, Mark.
Oh, all right. I was going to say, there's one more.
But if not, just
Okay.
let me know. Are you okay?
Roger that.
All right. So while Mark is finding who needs the link, so one of the things that I wanted to just show quickly from a teacher's perspective, and I know most of you have seen this before, but when you assign an assignment, you get to see really quickly which students have turned it in and which students have not. This view can be a little confusing because there's some interesting little subtleties to it. So if I either get into the assignment by clicking on the title as the teacher, or I click on either the done or the not done, it'll bring me to a screen that has a list of all of the students and the work that they either did or didn't do. So on the left-hand side, there's a list of students, and by default they're sorted by done. So these students here, they at least turned in the assignment. That doesn't mean they necessarily met all the expectations. Like you'll see Craig here, he got a 5 out of 100. But these students actually turned in the work, and then these students down here did not. Some teachers have found that until kids get the hang of turning things in, you might find that a student has done work, but they didn't actually hit the turn in button, or they didn't return the work, and so they'll still show up in the not done part of the message. All right, let me quickly invite Kim. So I'm going to stop screen sharing just for a second. Let's invite Kim. There she is. All right, and I'll go back to the screen share. All right, good. So the other thing that you as a teacher, you may or may not have seen from this screen is you can also sort this list on the left-hand side differently. So if I wanted to just sort it by name, so if I have lots and lots of students, and it's easy for me to just go right down the list by name, so I can resort that list, and now you see the students are sorted by last name, which can make it a lot easier depending on which way you want to look at it. You can also resort the list by first name. Okay? So all of those things you can do from here. The other thing that you can do, I'm going to go back to sorting it by status, is on I'm going to, if I wanted to email just the students that haven't turned in the work, I can check individual students, or I can check that box for the not done status and select all of them at once. And then by clicking on the little email button at the top, it'll automatically open an email addressed to just the students that I have checked. And then I can say, you know, reminder, this assignment was due. Okay, or did you actually turn it in? So you can send messages to kids right from there, which is nice. The other thing that you may or may not have noticed, I'm going to go up the screen here for a second. The email addresses, it puts in blind carbon copy or blind courtesy copy. So the kids can't see any other kids that you've sent the email to, which is nice. So if you're sending an email reminding kids that, you know, they need to do something or maybe giving them additional work, other kids don't necessarily know who else got that email. So you can have little groups set up and differentiate with questions without other kids knowing what group they're part of, which is kind of nice. So I'm going to get out of this and go back. Okay. So this list on the left-hand side is really powerful in terms of sorting and just being able to send messages to kids. The other thing that you can do from the left-hand side, I'm going to get rid of these checkboxes. Mark, I think your microphone might be on, so I'm just going to quickly mute you, if that's okay. And, oh no, I think you're already muted. All right, good, because there was a lot of background kitchen noise. Okay. So the other thing you can do from the left-hand side as well is I can assign grades. So if I know, you know, Amy Pond here already did the assignment and I remember that she did it really well and the assignment is out of 100 points, I could quickly assign her a grade here. And then you'll see when I do that, it checks the box next to her name and it reminds me that if I'm going to do that, I need to return that grade to her so she knows what she got. Okay, so if I wanted to do that, I could say return. Amy is the only box that's checked, so it's only going to be sent to her, and I can give her a private comment that only she will see, so the rest of the class won't see this comment. So you can also do that quickly from the left-hand side. So there are a lot of things you can do from this left-hand pane on the screen. The right-hand side gives you sort of just an overview of the class as a whole, and you can see a sort of a tile or a card for each student's name, and it'll show you which students, sort of the state of those students' work. So if I zoom in a little bit here, it might be easier to see. So if I look at Amy and Craig and Cindy and Derek, you can see that I've returned work to Amy, Craig, and Derek. I haven't returned Cindy's work. Okay, so I actually need to go in and look at it and return it to her. It also lets me know if they've done it or they've done it on time. Okay, so Cindy returned her work after the due date that I set. That doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't get full credit. It depends on, you know, how you work with the kids, but it does tell me that, which is kind of nice. And then if I keep scrolling, I can see, you know, students that didn't turn it in, and right now it's past the due date, so their work is late. So you can actually see the status of all the kids right from here. The other thing that you can do as well is, let's say that Clara was actively working on her document. If I click into Clara, it'll open up her document. And so if she's working on it, let me see if I move to the side here. All right, so if Clara has her document open, I'm going to quickly see if I can grab that. I can see her as the teacher working live, which is kind of cool. So I could give her comments as she was working. So, you know, if this was, you know, I know at our middle school we have an intervention period and an anchor period. So if I saw Clara was working, I could see what she was doing in the document, and I could leave her a comment as the teacher to try and help out. I could say, you know, I think your spelling is off, or something, whatever that I think might be helpful. So you actually don't have to wait until kids turn their work in to look at it. You can actually, right from this list here, jump into students' work just by clicking on it. You might want to let kids know that you're going to do that ahead of time so that you don't freak them out a little bit, but you absolutely can do that And you may want to do that before they turn it in, because remember, once the student turns it in, they no longer can edit their work and they can no longer see your comments. So if I bring up, for example, Clara's screen here, and I go into her work, and I wanted to talk about this work menu a little bit later because it's really handy, I think, for kids in particular. And so if I go into her Google Doc, and I haven't turned it in yet, I still have edit rights as Clara the student, and I can see the comment from my teacher, Paul Barrett. You know, and I can certainly type back saying, thanks, my cat typed that, or whatever. Okay, but as soon as I turn it in, now as the student, once that's turned in, if they go back into that Google Doc that they were working on, it takes away their editing rights and they no longer see the comments here on the side. So as a teacher, you might want to actually jump into their documents before they turn them in to give them feedback so they can actually see it. Okay. So anything from this screen that that you have questions about, or while you've been working with kids along throughout this year, you found to be confusing?
My biggest confusion is the unsubmit button and how that transfers to what the teachers can do and what the kids can do. Like once they turn it in,
Right.
they can't edit their paper anymore.
So right. So let me bring up Clara's screen again. That's a great point. So let me bring up her screen as the student, and I'll make it full screen so we're not seeing everything. So if I go into that, so there's my assignment, right? Like you were just saying, so I've submitted it. And they have a button as a student that they can unsubmit, because right now, because my assignment is done, there's no way for me to add anything else to this assignment. There's no way for me to attach something new. And again, if I try to go into that document that I turned in, there's no way for me to add something else if I forgot to do something or I wanted to make a correction. So in order for the student to do that, they have to unsubmit the document to sort of take it back. And then I can, just like we said before, I can edit it and I can go and I can add other things or create new documents, which we're going to talk about in a minute as giving kids some voice and choice. But from the teacher's end, I don't know if you noticed this, I probably should have pointed it out beforehand, but there were 7 done before, and now the numbers changed back to 6. And if I scroll down, I can see that Clara has unsubmitted. So it actually does show that Clara has unsubmitted her work. I can still see it as the teacher, though. So I can still jump into it, and if she were working in that document, I could see what she was doing, and I could ask her, hey, why did you unsubmit that? But as a teacher, I would think that you'd want to set up this sort of revision process. So if kids don't get it where it needs to be on that first try, as long as they've made the effort and they've got input from you as a teacher. I know different schools have different grading policies in terms of, can kids, try to fix things? Can they try and get better? Can they try and meet more of the goals? So Diane, is that specifically, or was it Eric, I'm sorry, who asked that question?
No, it was me.
Okay.
And so the biggest question that I'm getting from the teachers is the fact that they can unsubmit at any time. So if there was a due date,
right,
and they've turned it in, and then they talk to their friends and said, oh, I got that answer wrong, I'm going to go fix it, they have the ability to do that. So as a teacher, we would just need to pay attention if it says unsubmitted.
Right, absolutely. Well, the other nice thing is, and you have 2 ways to be able to see these sorts of things. So one, if I go into Clara's work here as the teacher, in the Google Doc, if it happens to be a Google Doc, of course, I can look at the revision history, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can always see that as the teacher. So I can see, oh, Clara added this on this date at this time. Now, there's not a whole lot in this document, so it's not particularly obvious.
Right.
But the other thing that you can see as a teacher, and I need to see, I think it's actually here. So if I go into Clara on the left-hand side, yes. So if I click on the student on the left-hand side, there's this really great feature that's kind of buried that sees submission history.
Yep.
So it shows exactly the date and the time that kids submitted and unsubmitted and resubmitted. So I know at Smithfield High School, some teachers have found this really handy when a parent has called and said, you know, you didn't give my child an opportunity to do revisions, because at Smithfield High School, that's one of their grading policies that they're trying out with kids this year. And the teacher can pull this up. Of course, they can bring up a screenshot if they wanted to email it to the parent. But they can show, well, actually, no, you know, Paul submitted it on this date. He unsubmitted it on this date and then resubmitted it three days later. So I did give him multiple opportunities and multiple chances to show proficiency.
Okay. That's a good feature. I had not found that.
Yeah, it's kind of buried. Unfortunately, it's you know, I like that Classroom is very it's very clean looking and it's very attractive to use. Unfortunately, because it is, some of the best features are buried. So that see submission history, like if you didn't stumble on it, so like Diane, if we look at yours, right? If we go here, if I had never clicked on your name here on the left-hand side and then looked over here, I may have never seen that, oh, I can actually go and see, you know, this is when Diane submitted it and this is when I returned it. Okay. This also, I think, for teachers is important to know because it also shows when you as a teacher returned it. You know, and that may be a good thing or a bad thing. I think another school, it might have been in West Warwick, the teachers, they saw from revision history and from this what time kids were working. And so I know they had some follow-up conversations with some younger students, like if they saw them working at 2 a.m., yeah, you know, they might want to go and talk to them and say, hey, you know, what are you doing up at 2 a.m. working on your story? So that's kind of interesting. Any other questions about this screen? Because I think this screen is particularly helpful and powerful. Okay. Does anybody in the Hangout now use the grading feature here?
I do.
I have.
Okay. So if you do use the grading feature, one of the things you can do if you think it's helpful is if you've assigned grades, first of all, you can choose up at the top what point scale to use. So if this was a homework assignment and I had a point scale of 5, I can change that. Now I've already graded kids, so it's letting me know if I change that value, the kids who have gotten grades, they're going to be notified, which is fine with me for this. So you can set the scale for the assignment any way you want. Okay, so obviously Amelia and Diane, you got way too much extra credit, so we'd have to change that. But once you have grades assigned, if you click on the gear up here on the right, you can do a couple of really neat things. So you can actually copy all the grades you have assigned into a Google Sheet. So you could make like your own grade book for that assignment, which is kind of cool. So once I did that, you'll see it not only did it copy the grades for that one assignment, but it's listed every single assignment, which is really cool. So I could actually have, you know, a running Google Sheet, and it shows me here, you know, a class average, a running average. It's not as sophisticated as the gradebook that's probably in your student information system, so Skyward, Infinite Campus, Aspen, but it is kind of nice and it's kind of simple and clean that it does that for you. The other thing that you can do from that gear is you can download either all the grades for your class or just these grades, and some gradebooks let you import grades. So if you wanted to give the kids feedback and grades using Classroom, but then not have to redo that work in your gradebook, you could download them it downloads them as what's called a CSV file, which is a fancy way of saying a comma-separated file, like a spreadsheet. But most systems, they can import that. I don't know of any teachers in Smithfield who have done that. It seems to me a lot of work, but if you wanted to, you could. So I'm not sure if anybody knew that those choices were there. This copy all grades to Google Sheets is really, really cool. So you could share that with an administrator. You could share that with, you know, co-teachers if you know you wanted to let them know how kids are doing. All right. So let me unshare my screen again for a second, and then we can talk about giving kids a little bit more choice. So let me stop that. There we go. Okay. So any other questions about that piece from a teacher perspective or a student perspective?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I really like, Paul, that it does play nicely with Infinite Campus and some of the others, because I didn't realize you could do that with the CSV file.
Yeah.
Normally what I literally end up doing is I have my Chromebook and my laptop, and I have the two of them next to one another, and I'm copying them in. So that's a huge time saver. Thank you.
Yeah, you might actually be one of the first Smithfield people to give it a try, and we can sort of use you as a guinea pig a little bit, like maybe pick one class, and we can get Joanne.
Can I get a prize?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But we can ask Joanne for help too on the best way to get into Infinite Campus.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm willing to give it a shot. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. So the other thing that we wanted to talk about was just giving kids assignments with Google Docs or Google Slideshows or Google Spreadsheets. That can be kind of limiting because you're still kind of dictating to kids, here's the writing prompt, or here's the lab we're going to do, and I want you to use the spreadsheet as the lab report. You're still giving kids parameters, and that's not a bad thing at all, but there might be some assignments where you want it to be much more open-ended. So you might want kids to show what they've learned about the water cycle, for example. And some kids, they may write about it. Some kids, they could create a slideshow about it. They could be very creative. Some kids might even create a little movie and want to get it to you. So especially I know middle school kids are extremely, extremely creative. So if you wanted to give kids an opportunity to show what they know about something, but not limit them to one way, there's another feature that, again, it's kind of hidden that you may not have seen within an assignment that you can use to allow kids to do those types of things. So let me share my screen and I'll show you how that would look from a teacher perspective and a student perspective. So let's go over here and give that a try there. Okay. So from a teacher perspective, I'm going to go back to my classroom. Okay. And let me make this a little smaller so we can see the plus button on the bottom, because I know that the videos cover that up. There we go, that's better. All right, so if I wanted to give kids choice and allow some differentiation with an assignment, so when I go to create an assignment, I'm just going to make a basic one here, explain what, or I could say explain 3 key points about the water cycle. Okay. And then in the instructions, I could say to kids, use any method or tool to show what you've learned. Okay. So that gives kids a little bit more of an open-ended opportunity to show what they've learned. And I could certainly put in here, some examples, right? If kids needed a, a little prompt, like, write a story about it using a Google Doc, whatever. I could put whatever I want in here to clarify for kids. And we can do all of the other assignment things that we normally do, right? So I could set a date. I won't with this one. But we don't have to necessarily attach anything here down at the bottom. We certainly could, like if there was a YouTube video you wanted kids to watch and think about before they did anything, or if there was a link to the resources that you want to remind them of. But I'm just going to leave this blank for now. And then when I click Assign, from the student perspective, so let me switch to Clara's account here from the student's perspective. Okay. So she sees the assignment, she sees the instructions, she sees the due date and the fact that she hasn't done it, just like everything else before. When she goes to open the assignment, though, there's no work attached to it. And that's perfectly fine. So she could, depending on what the assignment is, the work could be to have a constructive discussion or a constructive argument about whatever you just asked the kids, and that could be done in the comments. But there are two choices here that kids see that you might not have noticed from a teacher perspective. So if I'm Clara, and my strength is, you know, I'm a very visual learner, and I'm really good at explaining things using pictures and sequential types of things, I might say, you know what, I want to show Mr. Barrett what I learned by creating a Google slideshow, right, a presentation. So what she could do right from here is click Create and create a brand new Google slideshow right from the assignment itself. She doesn't have to go into her drive. And notice right from here, it named that slideshow with the title of the assignment. So she didn't have to even think about what to title it. And it put her name attached to it. So you as the teacher, you'll be able to see easily, this is the assignment that I gave to the students. This is Clara's work. Oh, and she decided to do a slideshow. So then from here, you know, the student could click in, and just like they normally would do, they could work on the slideshow, right? So I don't know if you've noticed or not, too, from a student perspective, but for whatever reason in Google Slides, there's no turn in button. So when kids are done with their assignment, if they're using a Google slideshow, they've got to turn it in from here. There's no little shortcut in the document itself. So I could certainly do that as a student. I could also create a drawing, a spreadsheet, or a Google Doc from here. And it would do the exact same thing. So if I chose to also add a drawing, it would automatically create a new Google drawing for me as a student. It would automatically name it for me as the student, and then I could get into it right here. What if the student, though, didn't want to use a Google thing? Right, and I know that we like a lot of the Google tools, but they are certainly not the be-all and end-all for kids. If they wanted to make a movie, or you know, my own kids at home are very creative. They, you know, one of my kids might have wanted to create a little song, right, and record that. So if they've got another type of file that they have, so an audio file, a video file, a Microsoft Word document, a PDF, a picture, pretty much anything that you can imagine that's an electronic file, they can also just click Add and either grab it from their drive, or they can attach it here. So if I had something, I don't know what I have on my computer. I probably shouldn't show you this, but okay, there's nothing that I don't mind showing. So if there was a picture here, I'm not following my own rules, Cindy, right? I should have planned this ahead.
I was thinking that.
Yeah. So let's say that this was a picture that I wanted to submit as evidence for this assignment right on my computer, and I could do this from a PC, a Mac, my phone, it doesn't matter. I can do that right from Classroom. Go and grab it, and you'll see it added that also to the assignment. So if you want to give kids flexibility and choice in how they show their learning and how they show their proficiency, from the student's perspective, when they look at an assignment, they always have these add and create buttons. And the difference between add and create, as you probably already guessed, is add is adding any type of file. So it doesn't have to be a Google file. It could be anything that they have on a computer or a thumb drive or whatever. Create is specifically for them to create a Google Doc, a Google slideshow, a Google spreadsheet, or a Google drawing. Google drawings are terrific for kids to do diagrams and mind maps and all kinds of different things. So if you haven't used that with kids, it's something kind of cool to do. So once I've done all those things as a student, it works the same way. To turn it in, I click the Turn In button. It's telling me these are the 3 things that you're sending to your teacher. And if I'm okay with that, I click Turn In. And just like the other assignment, it says Done at the top. And then as the teacher, so let's go back and see. So right away, my assignment updated to show 1 person is done. So if I click on Done, I see Clara's done. Oh, she attached 3 things, and then I open them up, and there they are. So has anybody used this way of allowing kids to send you other things through Classroom?
Not yet. I've had teachers that they don't attach the work, so they've been using the Create button quite a bit. But they're specifically saying create a Google slide or, you know, use a Google Doc or whatever.
Yep. So that can definitely sort of save you if you've done all the work on an assignment and then, like you said, you forget. Mm-hmm. That can definitely, instead of you as the teacher deleting the assignment and going back and redoing it, that's definitely a great use of that create or add button. I'm curious too, from the teacher's perspective, have you had any kids surprise you by adding something extra or creating a new document that you didn't anticipate?
Yes, I've had kids do that. One in particular you're very familiar with.
You don't have to mention his or her name.
Exactly.
But yes.
No, it's great. It's a wonderful tool.
It's one of those sort of hidden things. The other thing too is, I think once you show kids this, it's also a great way for just kids to be able to get you stuff without them having to go through email. Because we know, especially our younger kids, they're great with technology, but sort of the more formal ways of communicating, like email, they're not so great with. Doing attachments and stuff seems sort of antiquated to them. So this is a nice, easy way for them to get stuff to you. Erica, would you see yourself being able to use this with your kids?
I think so. I have a couple of projects where I let them choose different formats for presentations. We just did a poetry presentation, and they had to use technology in some way to present their poem. So this might be an option for them to do that. I didn't think about putting it in Google Classroom, but it would certainly be easy to do.
That actually would be the perfect type of assignment for that feature, giving them, you know, a wide variety of options. And the nice thing for you as a teacher too, it makes it easier for you to sort of collect their work without them having to get it to you in all these different ways. I'm curious, how did they? Do the kids submit stuff just on paper, or did they send you anything electronic for that assignment?
No, they had to present orally a poem that they had written, and they had to include technology in the presentation some way, somehow. So some of the kids created a slideshow with images that went along with their poems. Some of them did a recording of themselves presenting and showed the recording because it still met the criteria for the rubric, so they were able to do that.
Oh, cool.
Some of the kids did like background music that went along, instrumental, that went along with the theme of their poem or whatever. And I had one girl who she used an app, and I can't remember the name of the app, but she created this rap video. It was actually really good. So that they have. It's funny because, like you said, they have some amazing talents in some areas, and in others they're just, the kids. So
it's more of a challenge, right?
Yeah,
right. It's more of a challenge.
It's funny, the practical stuff they seem to have a harder time with, but if you ask them to make a rap video with their phone, they're, they've got it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that my daughter, she's always using her phone, and she's made her own green screen at home, and she's always creating all kinds of cool stuff. So for them to be able to get that from their phone, if they have the classroom app on it, to you as a teacher, that might even make it easier for them.
Yeah, that would have definitely made it easier, because I had kids emailing things, and,
right.
And I didn't even think about having this as an option for kind of that avenue for them to get it to me.
I think it's an option that's well hidden. So I don't think, and you as a teacher, you don't get to see it. So I think for a lot of teachers, they don't even know it's there because you don't see those add or create buttons unless you're sort of watching kids over their shoulder. Cool. Mark, is that dinner time? That bell?
Why do you assume it's me?
Oh, I wanted to make sure you're awake too. You looked way too relaxed over there. So there's one other quick thing I just wanted to show in terms of from the student view to maybe help them organize things, and then we can finish up with any other questions you want. I think for next time, there are a couple other little things with assignments that I wanted to make sure that people were aware of, like especially if your kids have Chromebooks. So I know Smithfield, this applies to you in North Kingstown, and Lincoln. It may depend on what kids are bringing into the classroom, or if they're just using the Chrome browser. If they have a certain extension installed, you can send things to kids live, and it'll appear in their browser, which is cool. So I think the next Hangout I wanted to demonstrate that, and we could play with that a little bit. But for the end of this Hangout, I wanted to demonstrate from a student's point of view the work menu, because I found it's really, really helpful, I think, for kids to stay organized. And I know, again, those middle school students in particular, that's a real, real challenge. So let me just bring my student screen up here again, and I'll show you where kids can find it. And some of the kids may have already figured this out, but if you as a teacher demonstrate this, it might be really helpful for kids, particularly starting the next year fresh. I know that we only have not even 5 weeks left of this year, I think. All right. I know, very exciting. And Mark and I are also very excited, although he'll never admit it, because it means you guys are going home, and we can get stuff done with nobody in the classrooms. All right. So I'm here as a student in my classroom, and if I click on that hamburger menu in the top right-hand corner, actually, this is a great example because this particular account, Clara's account, she's a teacher and a student. So this is a class that she's teaching. So you see the menu here is broken up. One section says teaching, and then down under here it says enrolled. Your students, they don't have the ability to create classes, so they won't see that extra section. But you as a teacher, if you're enrolled in a class that maybe one of your colleagues set up for professional development, for a book discussion or something, you'll see them differentiated, which is kind of cool. But as a student, they'll see all of their classes here, and they see a choice called work. And if they click on that choice, it shows them a really interesting list. So right off the bat, it shows them, you'll see at the top, all of their classes. But there's a little pull down here that if they click, they can actually sort classes so to just show the work that's due by class. So if this list is overwhelming for them, so I'm thinking again of a specific 8th grade student who will remain nameless, if he was looking at this, all the classes together, that might be just way too much to process, and then you just give up and you go play basketball, right? But if I can narrow it down by class, now I can see just what work is due for that one class. So let's look at our class. The other thing it shows you at a glance is, do you have any late work? Which again is really, really helpful for students if they miss something. And obviously teachers are terrific with checking in with kids, but this can also be helpful. So I can say, oh, I never did any of these assignments. I am really going to be in trouble. I can jump right to that assignment right from the work menu, which is nice. If I go back to that work menu, the other thing that I can see here at a glance is all of the work I've done. So just by clicking at the top, I can switch between work that's to do that I haven't completed yet and work that I have completed. So if I wanted to sort of, see what my progress has been like, get a sense of accomplishment, or if I want to jump back into assignment, like Diane was talking about earlier, if I wanted to unsubmit it as a student and take it back so I could do some additional things to it, this is a great place to go to be able to find it instead of trying to dig through all the classrooms. So here I could go right to that assignment and then unsubmit it as the student and pull it back. So that work menu here is really helpful for those things, for the to-do list, the done list, and sorting by class. And then the other thing that's here, which is fairly new, is this calendar view, which is really cool. So for kids and for teachers, you can see a calendar and what assignments are due when. By the way, these calendars also show up on the students and your Google calendars, and that's something we'll show at another Hangout. And that Google Calendar is also a great way for you as a teacher to make some of this information public to parents, because you could publicly share the calendar just for a class. You don't have to share your personal calendar, and then point parents to it either from your classroom website or through an email or whatever, and then parents can keep on top of, when is an assignment due, did Johnny, get all the stuff he needed to do that assignment for Monday, all of those types of things. So have your students, I'm curious, have any of your students been using that work menu?
No, but I just.
My knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know if kids don't want to let teachers know that they have it, right? Because then there's much or fewer excuses, I would say, to not handing things in. but I think it is really kind of a neat, helpful tool for kids once they know it's there. So before we wrap up for tonight, does anybody have any burning questions or something that they really want to learn next time that they want to make sure that we get into the Hangout?
I'm just wondering, is there a way to sync the grading in Google Classroom with whatever grading system we're using? Because we're switching to Skyward next year, and it would be nice if when grades were entered in one program, it would just, shoot it over to the next one.
Right. So the answer right now is not yet. However, Google actually just made an announcement. Let me see if I can find it, and I'll bring up the website. Yeah, I probably shouldn't do this either, but I'm going to. Never search in front of people, right?
All right, we won't want.
Here it is. So let me get this site and let me throw it into the Hangout. So let me throw this here, and let's see. So I think you should see on your screen now. Let me check my screen so I can see. If you click on the left-hand side of your screen, there should be a little app that says Showcase. It looks like a price tag, kind of like the Price is Right showcase tags. And if you it didn't bring up the link though. I'm looking at my test here next to me. You know what, I'll just email it out. But Google, what they did was, I'll put it up on my screen. Erica, they just announced that they've published some tools for other companies like Infinite Campus, like Skyward, like other types of school systems, so that teachers can do exactly what you were just talking about. So as a teacher, they could put some information into Classroom, and then it syncs with their gradebook in Skyward or Infinite Campus or whatever. That means that the other company needs to do some work to make that happen. So there's certainly no guarantee that like Skyward or Infinite Campus is going to do that work. But companies that do, you'll see here, they actually specifically say gradebooks and reporting systems can now also sync grades with Classroom, eliminating the need for teachers to manually transfer grades. So exactly what you were just talking about, which would be cool. So the answer to your question is not yet, but Google just announced that today or yesterday. So hopefully companies will take advantage of that new feature.
Paul, if I could bring this up, I know that Microsoft just also is starting Classroom, and that was one of the things that they had spoken about, was being able to integrate into any of the student information systems.
Yeah, it's really, and Mark, you know this well. It's first, does Google and the system that they want to work with, do they have the right sort of plugs for each other to sort of connect to, right? Those, they call them APIs, application programming interfaces, and then the other company has to do some work, and companies are strategic, right? You know, they want to make money, so sometimes they'll only put the work in for a very popular system. Like Classroom is really popular. So I'm assuming that vendors are probably going to go out of their way to want to integrate with it. But if it was a really small little application, a vendor might say, you know what, I'm not going to put the man hours, or the people hours, I should say, into doing this work until we know that, you know, it's going to bring us some benefit. Mark, have you heard anything from Skyward, like if they were talking about taking advantage of this?
I hadn't heard anything, but I also haven't really asked that question yet in terms of being able to integrate the Google Classroom stuff.
I haven't. I'm sorry.
I'll actually ask that question next week.
Yeah, I'll ask. I'll have Joanne, or I'll reach out to Infinite Campus and see if they were planning on working with this new option as well. I know that there aren't many districts in Rhode Island using Infinite Campus, but since we're one of them, you know, that would definitely be important to our teachers too. Okay, anything else that people want to make sure that we go over next time? You can certainly send me an email. You don't have to say now, but I'm just curious.
I'd like to see some examples of the extension called Share to Classroom.
Oh yeah, that's actually the extension that I was talking about. So yes, so I think definitely we'll do that next time because it's really neat, especially if your kids all have a device on in front of them with Chrome browser and with that extension installed.
Okay. Maybe I can get my tech director to push that out to all of the student laptops.
He is a genius, so I'm sure he's already done it while he was sitting there.
Good luck with that.
I have to say, in not Mark's defense, because he doesn't need a defense, but if the kids have school-issued Chromebooks, it certainly makes that easier, right? Because for us, because we own and manage the devices, we can easily push that out, and then we know that every kid has it. It's a little trickier with when you have different devices, but I'm sure there's a way to do it, and maybe Mark would want to work with just like one class of kids to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So, because trying to do it for everybody at once would be tricky.
Thanks, Diane.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm sure Erica's going to want to try that too, Mark, so it can't just be Diane.
You know what my room's like. It's like a triangle, so.
I'm sure that if you offer him a muffin or cookies, he'd be happy to come to your room. All right. So unless anybody else has a burning question, I think that's probably more than enough for tonight. And I really appreciate everybody RSVPing and letting me know that they're coming. That was really helpful on our end. And so I'll do the same thing for next week. I'll send out the calendar invite that people can use to RSVP. And that'll give us an idea of who's coming and who's not and make our lives a little bit easier. So thank you. Have a great weekend, even though it's not quite weekend yet.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mark.
You're very welcome. Mark, enjoy the rest of your dinner.
Night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.